Hello and welcome everyone in another episode of Researcher Celebrity. Today we have Dr. Bhaktee Dongaonkar with us. A brief about Dr. Bhaktee. She has done her bachelor's in electronic engineering from University of Pune, and then for master's she pursued cognitive sciences from University of Allahabad, and then for PhD she moved to United States and did her PhD in cognitive and neural systems from University of Arizona. Wanted to serve back to India. She came back and joined National Center for Biological Sciences, TIFR Bangalore, as a postdoc and research scientist, and currently she is assistant professor of cognitive sciences at IIIT Hyderabad. With this brief introduction, I would like to welcome Dr. Bhakti at the platform. Thank you, Dr. Bhakti, for taking
Thank you
time
so
out.
much.
So, at our this series, we generally talk about the life of researchers, their challenges, and their accomplishments. And always we start with the conversation that how and when you decided that you want to become a researcher.
So there was no plan as such that, uh, that I'm going to become a researcher. But during my engineering days, I knew I was inclined to explore more about how the brain works. And I was fascinated by whatever I was reading, the books I was reading, um, very different books written by scientists, basically, but summarizing the work that had been done over the decades. Um, and then when I did my master's program, that curiosity or that urge that I had to understand more of it sustained. So then I went for a PhD. And I think during my PhD, I realized um, maybe this is not all that bad, doing research, understanding how the brain, you get paid to do what you like to do. So it's not bad after all, but it has a lot of challenges. It's not so easy. So yeah, I mean, there have been times when I doubted whether it's a good idea to continue or not. But I think when you're interested, things just come up, opportunities come up, collaborations come up. You find interesting and exciting questions and you keep going. Yeah.
Your master's kind of, your bachelor's and master's, as you mentioned, ignited you to do at least PhD. And most of us, we know that PhD is not just an academic degree, but a training which trains you for the rest of your life. So we'll start from the journey of PhD. A, the reason you chose to join University of Arizona, and how did you prepare for that? Because our audience, we do get these questions that how to prepare for if they want to PhD in USA and all what the challenges which you have faced and how you have overcome that.
So during my master's, I was referring to a lot of papers for my master's thesis on stress and memory and the work that I was doing. And the authors of the reference papers became naturally people I thought I could pursue my PhD under. And this was way back in 2005 and 6. The internet hadn't taken up as well so much that I could go online and explore and get all the information. So my best way to look for people to do PhD under was to look for the authors. And I was advised that don't look at the university, look at the people that you have to work with,
Yes.
because after all, a PhD is more about working with the right kind of people and the topics and the questions they are working with. So I applied to 4 or 5 universities, and of them I got rejects from 3 and interview offers from 2. And then one of them did not have a fellowship for me. It wasn't conducive to go on your own expenses, and it wasn't sustainable. So then I went to University of Arizona, where um, I got a full fellowship and I could, sustain myself using teaching opportunities and research opportunities. And so I did my PhD with Professor Lynn Nadel, who is very well known for his work on the cognitive map. and multiple trace theory in memory. And yeah, he's done a lot of work on how the hippocampus is a brain region that is very important for spatial navigation and memory formations, long-term memory formations.
So conversations at this platform, we mostly talk about the PhDs in India and their challenges. But when you moved from country to a different, almost a different pole, okay? So the challenges you faced in United States during your PhD and the things which you kept you going.
Nice question. So, culturally, it was a big shift because the Indian education system is very top-down driven. Um, Asking questions, exploring, admitting that things that you don't know are not taken very positively. At least now things are changing slowly, maybe. But that thing was very welcoming. Um, that you could explore your ideas, you could question ideas of other people, and it doesn't matter if you're younger in age, you could still do that. Um, that took me a little while to understand, and also that it is expected that you do this in a research environment is something that I took a while to understand and get accustomed to. And PhD is a very self-driven process, and coming directly from an Indian education setup, I was thinking, why isn't somebody telling me what to do? And no one really tells you what to do in an ideal PhD situation. You are expected to think, you're expected to form your own ideas and become independent. And I think I spent the first few years just trying to understand that aspect. And I think eventually that has helped me in the long run. But I think
Yes.
that is very crucial for sustaining and having a research career of a long term.
So that is my next question, that how you have, so now because you got this training in United States, for our audience here, if you can tell that how to prepare yourself starting from PhD for the position to start an independent lab.
So right from a PhD, how you should have a mindset focused towards having an independent lab.
Yes.
I don't think there's any straightforward answer to this because your experiences will depend on who you work with, their working styles, the lab environment, your colleagues. So I was in an environment where um, you had to fend for yourself. So all challenges that come to you will always play a role. When I was doing my PhD, I used to think, why is it have to be so hard that you have to be on your own? And sometimes that can help because later on, when I moved back to India and the field that I work in, not a lot of people work. So even if there's no one I can really go and ask what to do or how to do. And that way of thinking that, you are on your own and you have to figure it out. Ask questions, ask help, um, go to the person you think is the best person you can help and figure out how to set up maybe an equipment or how to purchase things or where to find the best students or how to mentor students, because as a young faculty I'm still learning how to mentor young PhD students. Now I have PhD students and I try to reflect back on what my journey was like and what is something that I did not get that I could give my students to grow. So that is something I keep in mind. But no matter what your challenges are, they are always going to help you in your research journey in some way or the other. You'll find all kinds of challenges. So just keep your mind open and figure a way out to solve the problem.
So now this being said, that you mentioned about challenges, that how they shape the path of a researcher. In India, there are different issues which a researcher face. Either it is lack of resources or networking. So what you can share now, because you have worked in NCBS, like, one of the top tier in India, and you might be aware of the university level or state universities, or, some of the research institutes which are not very well funded. What the student should do when they are navigating their path through the PhD?
Um, so during the PhD, I don't think they can have a lot of choice because it will depend on the PI's lab and the equipment, if they choose a very biology oriented research career. But I came from a research career where I did not have to use a lot of um, equipment. Mine were behavioral studies. And one thing I realized, and you rightly pointed out, there can be a lot of challenges in the infrastructure and resources that are available in India. So I kept my hopes and expectations of the research questions that I can pursue to be very frugal in the way that I could answer questions maybe using behavioral studies in human beings, um, without being dependent on a lot of infrastructure. So, although I was at NCBS, I'm not a biologist. I don't have the training to use a lot of the biology techniques. Uh, but I collaborated with NIMHANS when I was in Bangalore. So, we got a steady pool of psychiatric patients where I could test some of my questions using a psychiatric model for testing some of the memory processes that I wanted to. So, considering all those aspects, you can design questions that don't necessarily have to be infrastructure intensive. Um, on the other hand, you can also build collaborations. You can also build networks by attending. There's India Bioscience in based at NCBS, and they do wonderful work where they hold these regional meetings and national meetings and connect people together in the life sciences area. And you can actually go and meet and get to know others who might be doing similar work, who might help, who might give you ideas of how to figure things out. Um, so yeah, there are different ways in which you can, find and navigate that place. And
Absolutely.
at IIIT, I have wonderful undergraduate students who are very smart, and they come up with very interesting questions, which can be done really without a lot of infrastructure, at
Yeah.
least in my area. I mean,
Yeah. In fact, this is something which, like, we always tell at this platform, that your research question should be more realistic depending on what lab you choose. But if you have something, the passion which drives you, you always find the ways where, as you mentioned, to establish collaborations. Because if you have a research question which need more of the either equipments or infrastructures or more of the intellectual guidance, that's when the collaboration plays a very important role in research. And we always say that research is not a one person thing ever. Doesn't mean
right,
that no one can claim that, okay, I invented this something or something, like, although we do this all the time, that I found this novel, we found that, or whatnot. But the truth of that is, like, whatever you have started with, there was so much of fundamental work done in the field, which you started building your block, joining, combining the blocks, and then coming up with totally something new. But that is what is the brilliant part of research we always see. So now, talking to the researcher who has done PhD in USA, then postdoc in one of the most elite institutes in India, how will you express the challenges of a researcher globally?
globally. Um, so regardless of where you are, what you do, what can the challenges be of a researcher is, designing doing those experiments, dealing with failures, dealing with delays, dealing with grants not coming on time, especially in India, and finding the right kind of students who can merge with your level of expectations and on the project that you want to carry out. Um, or even, mentoring students with their own ideas. Um, Finding that level of match, maybe at my stage of career, these are the challenges that I'm facing, or I foresee these as things that I need to figure out. Um, and dealing with failures, I mean, what if things go another way, and how do you figure it out and establish yourself as a career, as a researcher who is credible and can, have um, good quality work that can be publishable and trustable coming out from a lab in India.
Mhm. So now, the thing when we do talk about those failures which brings stress, or according to your own experience, how will you grade the stress which research brings, and how one can stand on top of it all the time?
No, can you ask the question again? I'm still not
So,
very clear.
so all these fail experiments, or things not working, getting delayed because of n number of reasons, brings a certain level of stress. And then
Yes.
what we are seeing these days in India, that there are so many students after completing 3 or 4 years into their PhD, dropping out, or in unfortunate cases, they commit suicide also. So here,
Yes.
what we try to talk about is this: what is the reason? Is it just the stress of research, or field experiments, or getting delays? So if we can talk about that and help our researchers who are either facing stress or having thoughts of quitting, so what are your suggestions for them?
So I think the primary reason that we come across for quitting, not all students quit, but most of the people, who feel dejected at such stages is because maybe the lab environment sometimes is not very favorable. It's not encouraging. And second one is the comparative, the comparisons that are made of yourself with others. Social media is right ready on your face, where maybe PhD is a very slow journey. I mean, you pick up things very slowly with research. You spend a lot of your youth doing research, and you might have peers who might get into jobs and get into promotions, and then you start comparing yourself to their life and your life. The financial differences, personal lives are very different, and it can lead to a lot of insecurity in younger adults, especially pressure from parents to have all the social obligations met. Sometimes, girls are pressured to get married very early, um, and then settling down. That settling down is having a stable job. So all of those factors play a role in different individuals, of course. Um, but I think the primary advice I would give is do not compare yourself to others, because your pace of work may be slower at the beginning. You might, take off really well later on. It might work for you. Because after my PhD, I was a postdoc for almost 6 to 7 years because I had a kid and I slowed down my work. And I started a job pretty much after 7 to 8 years of a postdoc. And if I compare myself to my colleagues of a similar age and cohort, they may be well ahead of me in a lot of dimensions. But I think it's about how you want and what you want to do with your research career that should be the focus. Because comparisons are always going to be at every stage of your career. Even if you become a established researcher, there are going to be comparisons. So I think keeping that focus in mind is very important.
Absolutely. And that's when we start comparing either with anyone else or with ourselves, comparison, I always say that should not be there for anyone, because what it does is like it always tell what you don't have. Although there can be
Exactly.
comparison that what you all have, but because of
Exactly.
our brain, or I don't know how important the society plays a role in this, people always see what I don't have. Instead of I always say that okay, SWOT analysis is very important. You should know what are your strengths, what are your weakness, opportunities, training, all of those. But the point here is you should be positive about all the time. And staying positive in research, I believe, like it takes at least 30 to 40% of research well, you know, because when
It's your
yes,
persistence. Yeah,
yeah.
that counts.
So now, when you mentioned briefly about the postdoc period of 6 to 7 years, how tough you feel, which you can tell all of our researchers that how they can A, minimize this, or how should they approach for the faculty positions if they want to, join as full-time researchers and a stable job?
Um, so when so in the first few years of my postdoc, I did most of the work that was a continuation of my PhD. And then midway between my postdoc, I joined another group as part of a collaboration that was outside of my institute, and started working on scientifically evaluating some Indian traditional medicines, and if we can study it scientifically in the way um, to evaluate its efficacy. So that the perspectives of very different projects gave me very different ideas of what I could really do with my research career. So I was looking for a place that was flexible enough to explore a breadth of areas, because I'm working not only from theory based experiments to clinical applications, clinical studies. I'm also working on digitalization of cognitive testing, which is building an app. So the range of ideas that I had, I needed an institute that could understand the vision of that as a researcher. I couldn't come under a biology or a psychology or a cognitive science only area. So I needed a very interdisciplinary way, and talking at conferences, attending a lot of online sessions like these that others gave, helped me to understand how other institutes think about their research plans, their research visions. So if you go to meet faculty at conferences, listen to their talks, or the directors on these days on social media, what is their vision for their institute? If you can analyze that information and figure out and have good colleagues, I mean, I always think it's important to have a good circle of people who can be not only critical but also supportive of you in your plans. So all of these factors, if you can find a few places that you can apply to, it doesn't have to be only the top tier. Sometimes there are a lot of good private universities these days. Some of the state universities are also becoming very supportive for lots of interesting research. But you really have to do your research in finding these places, especially if you are um, doing research that is very different from what has been done traditionally in India. And so my areas of research were not very conventional. So I really had to think of which places will be supportive for this kind of work and let me, be free, give me the freedom to explore and, think about it.
So this brings us to the point where you just mentioned about interdisciplinary research. Now people are coming out of their shells that chemists are working with mathematicians, biologists are working with engineers, so that the net output or the research focus they brings is obviously out of the box, because nobody was thinking it that way, especially when they are not coming out of their boxes. So the current situation, when you explained about your project, which you did, like, out of the institute and establishing so much of collaborations, which obviously is an interdisciplinary project which you did. Now, when you see a, a student approaching to you with a totally different idea, how will you guide that person, saying that what are the limitations of the lab, or like where they should go to pursue that?
So if a student is interested in working with me, and they approach me, and if the topic is not something that I have worked on before, um, but sounds interesting and is doable, if I tell the student that if you can help me understand, I can
Mhm.
help you do the project.
Sweet.
So the student would have to maybe put an effort in reading and understanding a lot of the concepts and help me understand what they are interested in. And so I would also have to do maybe a little bit of reading. But I try to keep it within a scope that I can manage. I can't go beyond a certain breadth,
Mhm.
because then the quality of the kind of work that we can do will not, be maintained. But then, if the topic is beyond what I can do, I definitely recommend them to contact people that I know. I, in fact, even refer sometimes right to them and
Mhm.
introduce the student, saying, why don't you talk to this and have a discussion and see if things can be worked out.
I think this is something which I feel, and this is just my personal feeling, probably I might be wrong, but in terms of collaborations between researchers, established PIs, this is something
Mhm.
which I have realized that we are not very much collaborative. I don't know if it is just the Indian environment or even outside people. I've heard the stories, but how do you say that we can overcome these limitations or break these boundaries?
Another very good question, especially in the Indian context. Yes, I agree. And it has been my experience as well as a postdoc. When you go and ask, or share ideas and think of collaborations, it's very difficult to get somebody excited to work with you. Um, as a faculty now, I kind of feel in India, people take you more seriously when you become a faculty than when you're a postdoc. But still, the challenges still remain. Not everyone is collaborative unless it aligns with their ideas sometimes. So you really have to find every opportunity you can to have conversations. Keep an open mind. If you are close-minded, you will never find anyone. And you'll always work in your isolation. But if you keep an open mind, give others a chance, do some pilot work if you think you want to tread very carefully, and then see how the nature of the two people, because it's important, not only is the work or the question aligning, but also your personalities need to align, because you will have challenges later on that you will have to resolve. And those aspects also need to be considered when you are doing collaborative work. There's sharing of students, sharing of resources, data sharing policies, authorship credibility. All of those aspects are very important in collaborations. So, having very honest conversations from the start, um, and keeping things clear, I think sets the ball rolling. And your intention just comes out when you start discussing these things, and your interest and your
Well,
passion if you are passionate about that work.
yes, another very important topic which you just touched upon. So in India, authorship issues comes almost, every day, if not every minute or hour. The information or the training of a student about the authorship orders, or, who will be or who will not be the author, what you have learned in this scenario till now, and how do you implement it, and what you can suggest our viewers that they should ensure things beforehand.
So if at a younger stage, I say at a PhD or a postdoc level, if you've done substantial work, I'm sure you know that, you should have um, a good authorship position on the paper. But if you're learning and you've helped, and there have been instances where I don't expect authorship, but I don't mind helping because I get to learn sometimes. And that's also okay, because that is part of the research, and give and take sometimes. Um, and as a and those opportunities have helped me learn, which I may not have learned on my own. And now, as a mentor or as a faculty, I make sure that students are clear about their roles before we start working on projects, or if there is a project that is about to be completed, or paper has to be written, the ownership of different responsibilities is has to be carved out. And so the expectations are set for each student who can be authored, that you've done this, so you could be in this position as an author.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, at this stage, this is how I'm figuring it out. But with collaborative studies, it's more depending on which lab has done more work contributing to that kind of work.
Mhm.
So, and we're flexible with collaborations. It's more about getting the work done more than um, sharing. The authorship is important, but um, you know, the importance of authorship on the paper, and uh, the sequence of authorship on the paper, all of that comes in secondary, because the kind of questions we're exploring are so difficult to sometimes even get working, that we're just happy that these projects are running.
So this is something which we always say, that research should be done. The rest, everything is second, as you
Will
mentioned.
fall into place. Yes.
Yes, but now, so.
But again, I mean, I want to point out that yes, this is an ideal scenario. It doesn't always happen like this everywhere.
Mhm.
There can be toxic people around. There can be uh, unwanted things happening that you never thought of. And I think there have been a lot of forums that have discussed this, about how you should speak up and report these things happening at the institute. If it has been happening periodically in a
Mhm.
certain lab or in a certain institute.
Mhm. So now we are walking towards the edge of our conversation. I would like to ask you your thoughts about researchers being celebrities, because we are having this conversation at the series which is named as Researcher Celebrities.
I don't understand. I don't know. I mean, in what way um, you think researchers are celebrities? If they are cited a lot, if they're invited to a lot of talks, how does a researcher become labeled as celebrity?
Okay,
I
so
don't
I would
know.
like to explain that to you and to all the audience. So sometimes I do mention this thing, that the idea of having this series and having researchers from all the different stages what we can think of. So we had researcher who is just a master researcher, and an emeritus scientist who had Padma Shri, got all those recognitions in India. The purpose of this series is to celebrate research. So we go opposite of that way. Researcher celebrity, let's celebrate research. That's what we call, every single researcher is celebrity for us. And this is a small token of our achievements, accomplishments, whatever anyone can say. But whatever we have learned from our research community in India and abroad also, to give this back to them, the idea of a, like accomplishment, as you mentioned, how anyone can say that okay, they are celebrity if they have published in Nature, Cell, Science or something, or if they are just being in there. I believe if they are there, for biologists, I always say every single PCR setup anywhere in the world counts for research. There might be failures, things might have not gone the way they are, but somebody has taken their time invested the resources in it, and have done all the hard work which needs to be done. So every single
Right.
one of whosoever is a researcher is a celebrity for us.
Right. Right, totally. And I agree with that celebrity definition for a researcher because there's so much happening in the background. The challenges that you're overcoming every single day. That, yeah, I mean, it's nothing short of a celebrity status. I mean, um, if you can do research um, and um, enjoy it, and you're able to help young minds, explore and um, be fascinated by this kind of work, I think that itself is an achievement for me at this stage um, of my career. Because students these days get demotivated very quickly because of the opportunities that are coming up outside of research areas. Of course, there's industry research also. There are non research positions as well that PhD holders can take. Um, and they are also good positions, but if you have this exploratory mind and you want to carry out things that um, are dear to you, and you want the freedom to explore but still have the challenges, how do you maintain that balance is something I'm still learning. And I think I'm still learning how to inculcate that in students. um, I, I try to have as many conversations as I can, learning through these students what they think, like what are their anxieties, what are their stresses. Every generation has a different reason to get stressed. And I think just accomplishing all that and still managing to do research itself is a success.
Yes. And we always say that do whatever makes you happy. And if you think research is something which makes you happy, can drive you, then nothing can stop you and should
Yes.
not stop you. So,
Yes.
so for our viewers, I'll say that the conversation which we had, Dr. Bhakti, some points which came out very strong was like, whenever you are planning to join a lab, either for your PhD or for your postdoctoral fellowship, you should always consider what is the lab environment, how open-minded the PI is, because you are going to have a lot of conversations. And if they are not open-minded, then probably you are not a best fit for that. And always be ready to accumulate whatever it takes, because no research question is small and they always evolve. So you might answer some today. It will bring out 10 more questions, which you have to keep going on and on and on. So, Dr. Bhakti, we will say thank you very, very much for sharing the journey experiences with our viewers. And if our viewer want to contact you, can they write questions to you?
Sure. Absolutely. They can just email me. My
Yes.
email ID is on the university website.
Mhm.
They can just write to me.
Great. So I will say to all the viewers, if you have any questions or if you want suggestion or guidance from Dr. Bhakti, please feel free to write it to her. If you want us to put you in contact with all of rest of our researcher celebrities, feel free for that also, because we are trying to build a niche for every single passionate researcher who wants to be in the field and want to pursue their passion. We, if we can help with the wings, we will be more than happy with that. And stay tuned for more researcher celebrity. Thank you very much, Dr. Bhakti. It was pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure talking to you too. And I think you asked wonderful questions, and I think they make a lot of sense. And I hope I could connect with some of the viewers.
I am 100% sure all the researchers, they can connect with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.